Hey guys, welcome to Solving by Factoring Part 2. So this one, it's pretty much the same thing but one extra little step. So go ahead and start this review. Read this and try to answer it. So a model rocket is launched from the roof of a building. It goes up in the air. There's the equation. It comes back down and hits the ground at some point. At what time does the rocket reach a height of 7? So see if you guys can answer that question. Now, we gave you a graph, so just look at the graph. Height of 7 is always here, right? That's 7. So at what time does it hit 7? And it looks like it happens right here and right here. Now, what are those values? This looks like it's at 1/2, so I'd say 0.5 seconds. And this one looks like it's at 3 seconds. Okay, so I would say those are our 2 times. Now, today we're going to learn how to actually solve it if you don't have a graph. So here's what we're going to do. Write down your equation. Negative 2t squared plus 7t plus 4. We want to set it equal to 7 because that is the height that the problem is asking for. So in for height here, we're going to put a 7. Okay, so do you guys see how I did that? Just plug in 7. And now, solve. So in order to solve, remember we said it has to be equal to 0 in order to solve and factor. So we need to start by bringing the 7 to the other side. So we need to subtract the 7 over first so that it could equal 0. And now it's negative 2t squared plus 7t minus 3 equals 0. And this, now we can factor and solve. All right, let's try it. So it's a trinomial, which means MA table and boxes. Okay, so actually, first on this one, since the leading coefficient is negative, we want to divide everything by -1 first. And then it's positive 2t squared, negative 7t, positive 3 equals 0. Okay, now we're ready for the box. So 2t squared goes here, and 3 goes here. And then MA table, we need 2 numbers that add to -7, multiply to 2 times 3, which is 6. Okay, so find those numbers. And ends up being -6 and -1. And don't forget to give them both t's, -6t and -1t. Okay, GCF time. GCF here is -3. GCF here is 1t. GCF here is 2t. And here is just -1. Okay, let's write it out. So our factors are t minus 3 times 2t minus 1 equals 0. And now let's use our 0 property to actually solve them. So it's either t minus 3 equals 0 or it's 2t minus 1 equals 0. Okay, so this one you'd have to add the 3 over. So t would equal 3. And this one you'd have to add the 1 over and then divide by 2. So t would be 1/2. And what do you guys notice? Same answers as we got graphically. So at 1/2 and 3. 1/2 and 3 seconds. Okay, so algebra works as well as graphing. So the big notes for today are when you're solving by factoring, make sure your equation is equal to 0. You may need to move a number first to make it happen. and then factor completely, and then use the zero property, set each factor equal to 0, and solve. Okay, so here we go. Let's just do, we'll just do 2 more. So number 1, it says solve by factoring, but you can only solve by factoring if it equals 0, which means we're going to have to move the 14 over. So now it's x squared minus 5x minus 14 equals 0. You can't actually subtract because they're not like terms, so you just put it in order. Okay, now that it equals 0, we factor, which is a trinomial, box, and MA. So 2 numbers that add to negative 5 multiply to negative 14. Oh, and the x squared goes here and the minus 14 goes here. Okay, so find those numbers. It's looking like it's negative 7 and 2, and we're going to give them both x's. And then GCF. So you guys should hopefully be pros at this by now. This one's going to be negative 7. This is x, and this is 2. Okay, so we write them as factors. X minus 7 times x plus 2 equals 0. And now you guys can use the zero property to solve. So this one means x minus 7 equals 0, and this one means x plus 2 equals 0. So what are your 2 solutions? If you add the 7 over, we get x is 7. If we subtract the 2 over, we get negative 2. And that's it. Okay, same idea with number 2. It has to equal 0 for factoring to work. So we're going to have to start by subtracting the 12x over. So it's 3x squared minus 12x equals 0. And now we can factor. But this one, notice they both have a common factor. They both divide by 3 and they both have an x. So this is a GCF one where if you divide both of them by 3x, you're left with x minus 4. And then we're actually ready to solve. So zero property says either 3x equals 0 or x minus 4 equals 0. And then right away we can get our 2 answers. If you divide by 3, x equals 0. And this one, if you add the 4 over, you get x equals 4. So those are your 2 answers. So actually, the GCF ones are easier than the trinomials. Okay, if you guys have had enough, feel free to stop. I am going to do one more just in case here for anybody who wants it. Okay, so this is the depth of a submarine. At what time is the depth 1 meter below the water? So that means that you need to plug in for the depth, you're going to plug in negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to write this out. It's negative 2t squared plus 13t minus 16 equals negative 1. But we're going to have to add the 1 over in order to have it equal 0. So if you add the 1 over to its like term, it's negative 2t squared plus 13t minus 15 equals 0. Okay, and now this is a trinomial, so it's MA and table, but first don't forget to divide everything by negative 1. So now it's positive 2t squared, negative 13t, positive 15 equals 0. This is what we're going to factor. All right, so if you're still with me, we've got a table, the boxes. We've got a 2t squared and a 15. And then we got to find two numbers that add to negative 13, multiply to 30. And that ends up being negative 10 and negative 3. And that's what goes in the boxes. Negative 10t, negative 3t. And then GCF. So here we got a negative 5. Here we got just a 1t. Here we got a 2t. And here we got a negative 3. All right, so if you write it out, we're at t minus 5 times 2t minus 3 equals 0. And then we can use our 0 property to solve. This one, when does t minus 5 equal 0? And this one, when does 2t minus 3 equal 0? So if you add the 5 over, you get 5 seconds here. If you add the 3 over and then divide by 2, this one ends up being 3/2 or 1.5. All right, nice job, guys. That's it.